And I'm very pleased now to be joined by former Labour Party advisor Scarlett Mccgwire. Scarlett, it's so nice to see you. Thank you for coming in. How would you advise the Tory party, from a Labour Party that has managed in 5 short years to detach the hard left and win a pretty record majority?
Well, you see, the first thing you said is that you don't win from the centre. So you think that one has to move to reform. What I would say is I think you're absolutely right that it's about getting reform votes, but that's what the Labour Party is trying to do. I mean, a lot of people who voted reform were not particularly political. They were angry, and they were angry that we had a government that didn't work. And what's happening now with this sort of amazing Conservative psychodrama is that Labour is just being left to say, yeah, they were terrible, and look at what we're doing. And that is the problem. The problem, as the Conservative Party discovered in 97, and frankly, the Labour Party has discovered many times, but 2010 was the last, is nobody listens to you. And frankly, when Keir became leader of the Labour Party, nobody was listening. We were in the glory days of Boris Johnson. So actually, my thing is to stop doing interviews castigating the government, as you say, to take responsibility and to work out how to move on. And the infighting, it is rats in a sack. I would say stop that completely and quietly work out what you're going to do.
And I think your point's so strong that I remember 1997, that nobody's interested in what the Tory party has to say. I remember going to the 1997 Tory party conference in Blackpool, and all these shadow ministers stood up and said, this is what we're going to do. And I sat there thinking, no, we're not. That was worth making a speech of about last year when we were in government, but now we're in opposition. However brilliant your idea, it's not going to work. So you have to reform and restructure the party structures, and be modest about what you're saying to voters.
Yeah. I mean, but you see, you say that unity comes after success, but the problem is how do you get to success without any unity? Because at the moment, one of the great disunities is what to do with reform. And you have a lot of Conservative Party members and former MPs, both on the right and the left, who see Nigel Farage as a traitor. He's absolutely wrecked it. And then there are other people more like you and like Suella who go, actually, we have to bring him into the fold. That needs to be sorted out.
Indeed, and I think we need to recognise that the party made mistakes rather than Nigel stole the votes. I think there's an arrogance in thinking that Nigel stole votes that we were automatically entitled to. Democratic politics doesn't work like that.
No, I completely agree. And I think, advising the Labour Party is what they have to do, is they have to say to the reform voters, we will deliver. Because that's what happened was that Boris Johnson promised an awful lot, delivered next to nothing. And this went on and on and on. And so people said, what is it? And what worries me is that we've got a distrust in politics.
We always have, I think. I think it's one of those things, everyone says this is the worst generation of politicians in history, but every generation has said that, haven't they?
Well, in 97, more people claimed they voted for Tony Blair than actually did.
Yes.
There was this absolute belief, and it did take 5 years for people to start saying, but where's this and where's this and where's that?
And that, I think, is really interesting because, to your point, that what opposition say doesn't matter, actually, it's governments that lose elections. And that people started listening to Keir Starmer, not because he suddenly came up with fantastic policies or flip-flopped, as we were saying, in the election campaign or whatever it was, but because Boris had been replaced and we looked as if we weren't governing competently. And suddenly, the Labour Party looked like a government in waiting. And unfortunately, from an opposition, you don't command events, you wait upon them.
Yes. No, and absolutely. I mean, for Keir Starmer, he had to wait until, it was before Boris left. He had to wait for people to lose their faith in Boris Johnson, for things to go quite wrong.
And this was true with the Conservatives against Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. It was true for Tony Blair against John Major. The ERM catalysed that. It was true of the winter of discontent, that every time there's a big change, it's actually because the electorate's lost confidence in the governing party, not because the opposition's so brilliant. Absolutely.
But what we have to remember is what Boris Johnson said is they lent us their votes.
Yes.
And that's what Labour has to understand is they also were lent votes. I mean, what's interesting is this is a much more volatile country, is people who's voted Labour all their lives, whose parents always voted Labour, don't always vote Labour anymore, and ditto the Conservatives. And frankly, I mean, as somebody who's obsessed with politics, it's fascinating.
That makes two of us. Scarlett, thank you very much. Such a pleasure to have you on.